Welcome. Welcome. I'm David Magleby, Professor of Political Science at Brigham Young University. It's my pleasure to moderate today's debate at the invitation of the Utah Debate Commission. This event, held live on May 29th, is part of the Utah Debate Commission's work to educate voters and encourage the civil exchange of ideas. If you're watching or listening live to this debate, we encourage your reactions and questions on social media using the hashtag UTDebates. Republican Party candidates Mike Kennedy and Mitt Romney are in the studio today. They are competing for the U.S. Senate seat currently held by Orrin Hatch, who is retiring at the end of this term. Voters will select between the two candidates in the June 26th primary election. Whoever wins in June will then compete in the November general election representing the Republican Party. Both Mr. Romney and Mr. Kennedy will be answering questions posed by myself and a panel made up of Utah students and a journalist. Our panel members are Kanishka Regula, a recent Skyline High School graduate, 2018 presidential scholar, and newly eligible voter. Alex Trujillo, a senior at Utah Valley University. Juan Jatan, a recent honors graduate from BYU's political science program. And Lisa Riley-Roche, political reporter for the Deseret News. The Utah Debate Commission's format for this debate includes 1-minute answers from each candidate. They will also have an opportunity to offer a 30-second rebuttal. At my or a panel member's discretion, we may pose a follow-up question. The candidates, if such follow-ups are asked, will have 30 seconds to answer those questions. Just prior to the debate, a coin toss determined that Mr. Kennedy will provide the initial response to the first question. We'll alternate who answers first on the remaining questions. Let's get right into the questions. Mr. Kennedy, Representative Kennedy, it's important for every voter to know something personal about a candidate. The Utah Debate Commission crafted a question for each that allows this opportunity. There will not be a rebuttal on this first question. The first question goes, as I said, to Representative Kennedy. Why are you seeking election to the U.S. Senate, and what uniquely qualifies you for this high office?
Thanks for that question, David. It's a pleasure to be here with you and these fine, upstanding people at Brigham Young University, where I graduated with my law degree. And I'm just grateful I don't have to take a final exam at this point, although it might be a little easier than what I'm doing at this point. This is my county as well. It's where I practice medicine. I love practicing medicine here and serving the people. In addition, I've been a state legislator for Utah County people and citizens, and it's a pleasure for me to serve them in that way as well. In fact, working with the legislature and our good governor, we've helped to foster and support such a great economy that even a Boston, Massachusetts businessman has seen fit to relocate here and practice his life and his business as well. And we're grateful to have him here. And I welcome you, my friend, to Utah. And I'll just say Utah is open for business. I love Utah. It's a pleasure to serve here, and the people are outstanding. And I want to make sure that we have an outstanding representative in Washington to make sure that Washington works for Utah, not Utah working for Washington.
Governor Romney, what qualifies you for this office, and why are you seeking it?
Thank you, David. And thank you to the Debate Commission and also to BYU for opening the studio for us to be here today. I want to thank the people of Utah. I had the chance over the last several months to go across the state and to go to 29 counties. Ann and I have loved the experience, and the beauty of our state is only matched by the beauty of our people. We're going to lose a lot of clout in Washington as Orrin Hatch retires, and no one can really replace all that clout. But I do believe that by virtue of the experiences I've had, and also by the relationships I have with the White House and with some 40 senators who I've campaigned with, Republicans all, I believe I'll be able to help Utah continue to punch above its weight. We face some real challenges across our country, right here in our state. Some parts of the state are growing like crazy. Others are in real distress right now. I want to do everything in my power to help the people of Utah, and I believe I'm in the best position to do so.
Our first question will come from a student, Juan Jatan. It will go to Governor Romney.
Thank you for being willing to answer the question. The World Health Organization ranks the French healthcare system, a non-free market but universal healthcare system, as first in the world. America ranks 37. How will you improve our current healthcare policy, handle the profit-making incentive of medical providers, and would that include making healthcare more accessible, especially for the uninsured and those with pre-existing conditions?
Well, I can certainly tell you that I wouldn't give a lot of credit to the people in France about deciding who's got the best health care system, because if people in France get real sick, they come here. This is the place in the world where you get the best health care possible. I've learned a great deal about health care and recognize that the right place for health care policy to be crafted and implemented is at the state level, not at the federal level. Our Constitution said that those powers not specifically granted to the federal government are reserved to the states and the people. And yet with Obamacare, President Obama took over our health care system. Wrong answer. Return health care to the people of Utah. Let Utah craft its policies in the way that are best for the people of Utah. And we talk about market-based incentives. Let me tell you what that means. Market-based incentives are saying that hospitals and providers need to provide their price so that people understand how much it costs to get a particular procedure at a particular institution, and also their quality, their success rate. Those two pieces of information will get health care to start working like a market.
Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, David. I know a little bit about healthcare. It's been a privilege for me to work in the healthcare arena for the past 20 years and serve the good people of Utah. And I believe our healthcare system is an outstanding system, unparalleled throughout the world. And I will stand with our hospitals and providers of healthcare on multiple levels and reflect the fact that we love serving our people, and we are more than capable of serving our people. We reach out on a routine level, trying to help them and their needs. And I, as a voluntary care clinic servant in Provo, actually serve the people for free in Provo, Utah, trying to help them in their health care needs. So as to access, people already have access. They can go to any emergency department throughout the country and have access as they need it. And then in the state legislature, which is where, if there's regulation that needs to be done, it should be done in the state legislature, because it's accountable and it's responsive to the people. I've seen that in the form of Steve Elison's bill, where we expanded PCN, Primary Care Network, and provided additional access for people that don't have the means to have access to insurance. And I stand with the state legislature in accomplishing that.
Do either of you want to have a rebuttal to each other's responses?
I think the comments that the representative made are spot on.
And I appreciate Governor Romney. He sounds almost like a doctor. That's
well,
excellent.
Let me have a follow-up question to both of you on this topic. Following up on the wording of the question, I'd like you to address the issue of, if the Affordable Care Act is taken away, as has been frequently voted on in the House, what will be the substitute with respect to pre-existing conditions, the uninsured, coverage for those, and especially, given our audience at a university, people who are not on their parents' insurance but were covered under the Affordable Care Act, to be able to have their parents' insurance cover them. On those specifics, how would you respond? Governor Romney and then Representative Kennedy.
Well, first of all, Obamacare does need to be repealed, but I don't want to see the federal government step in with a new federal program. I want instead health care to return to the states. And at the state level, we'll be able to make sure that we have coverage for people with pre-existing conditions. We can expand coverage to make sure that everybody ultimately has access to insurance and has insurance. Those two elements have to be part of any plan that gets created. And I can tell you this, having had the experience of being a governor and putting together a plan that worked for our state at a state level, the right answer is not a federal takeover of health care, it's return the power to the states. And the state of Utah knows a lot better how to care for people here, how to make sure that pre-existing conditions don't prevent people from getting insurance, how to make sure that we also have insurance for all those that are not currently insured. Look, we want people to get insurance, and the reason for that is, if they don't have insurance and they get sick and they go to the emergency room to get covered, to get treated, guess who pays for it? You do. The people who are paying for free care are you. The people who are buying insurance, who have insurance, pay for those that don't. I want everybody in the system. Utah knows how to do that. Obamacare is the wrong way to go. It needs to be repealed.
Representative Kennedy.
Obamacare definitely needs to be repealed, and I've stood against Obamacare and its implementation in the state of Utah. I'm not interested in more government programs, which my opponent on some level has created more government programs and instilled that in his state, and I respect that. It was a state that wanted that. But in the state of Utah, I, along with many others, fought against the implementation of Obamacare, and I'll stand with that. Healthcare is best delivered by doctors and patients working together. Get third-party payers and government systems out of the way. When it comes to pre-existing conditions, which is an important policy question, I've had great patients with very minor medical issues that in the past They had no access to insurance. It was shameful how it was, so they need to have access to insurance. And I stand with the policy to move aside pre-existing conditions as eliminating people having access to insurance. When it comes to 26-year-olds who have access to insurance, I'm in favor of that as well, but I'm not invested in the taxpayers paying for that. I believe free market reforms are the best way for us to move forward on our health care systems and make sure everybody has excellent access to the care that the United States provides.
Next question will be from me, and it'll go to Representative Kennedy first. President Trump, since taking office, has withdrawn from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, is renegotiating the North American Free Trade Agreement, and has imposed tariffs on China and other countries, although day-to-day those are in flux. What is your view on tariffs and trade, and specifically the three I mentioned, TPP, Nafta, and tariffs on China? Representative Kennedy.
The art of the negotiation is something that our chief negotiator is able to clearly work forward on, and I stand with the president. I think he's done an outstanding job moving forward on many of these issues. I feel like in the past that prior administrations weren't watching out for the American people as much as they were for their own political legacy. And I believe that, especially in the case of NAFTA, that it's important that we reanalyze these agreements that we've made in the past and make sure that they work for the American people, not for citizens of other countries throughout the world. So I stand with the president working on these issues and making sure that they work for the American people so that we are not put at disadvantage throughout the world as to our dealings with our partners in trade and on multiple other levels throughout the world.
Governor Romney.
Yeah, first of all, with regards to TPP, the president, but also Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton were all against TPP, and I think they were wrong. I think we should have been engaged with the Asian nations. I think the president is inclined to consider opening that up again. I think it's a good idea. I think it's important for us to recognize that Utah is a net export state. We sell more abroad than we buy from abroad. We want new markets for our goods and services, so TPP is something I'd like to see the president pursue, and I'd be happy to help him in that effort. Number two, with regards to NAFTA, Canada and Mexico are our two largest trading partners. We don't want that to be disrupted. But with regards to automotive products in particular, Mexico's getting too good a deal. That needs to be readdressed. But the big problem here is with regards to China. Of the $560 billion trade deficit that we have, 2/3 of it is with China. And China cheats. They steal our technology. They are not fair with regards to the processes that we have in this country. And so we're going to have to get tough with them, and the president is. I applaud the fact that he's being tough on China. He's pinpointing particular areas of their economy and companies that are cheating and being unfair. That's the right thing to be doing. And I don't want to see broad tariffs. That's the wrong way to go. A trade war is not good for Utah. But specifically going after the bad actors, that makes sense.
Representative Kennedy, a rebuttal on this? And if so, I'd like to add 10 seconds to your time.
Thank you, and I'll take that. I'm just pleased to hear that my opponent's willing to stand with the president on such an important issue, and I encourage him to do that, and I certainly would do that as well.
Governor Romney, any rebuttal?
Yeah, no, it's not a rebuttal. I appreciate the compliment, and the reality is that I'm happy to stand with the president whenever I feel that he's doing something that's right for the country, right for Utah, and I think it's appropriate that the president is looking at trade deals. I think in many instances the trade deals have not been implemented effectively or perhaps negotiated effectively, and when nations cheat the way China has been cheating over years with currency manipulation, and then more recently with hacking into our systems, stealing our technology, not abiding by our trade agreements. In circumstances like that, we need to have a president that steps up to him, and I'm glad he's doing it.
I'd like to ask a quick follow-up. I'll remind you the follow-up should be 30 seconds. You differ from each other in your answer to the question with respect to the people in Representative Kennedy's answer and Governor Romney's about Utah benefiting from NAFTA. So I want to come back to that and ask you both to address the issue of what is in Utah's interest with NAFTA. And secondly, in this follow-up, what about the start of a trade war? We've experienced that in the past with a senator from Utah named Smoot. It's in every econ textbook. Do we want a trade war? Representative Kennedy.
Tariffs are a version of economic warfare, and we need to take those seriously. Sadly, tariffs a lot of times punish those that we intend to protect. And I've talked to the good citizens in Utah that may be implicated in these wars associated with the tariffs and possibly in these negotiations, their businesses being harmed. However, and it was, I think back to somebody that I talked to in one of my meetings that I had, this individual said, look, I am buying aluminum on a regular basis, and these tariffs are going to hurt me, but I stand with the president because I know that in the end, we're going to get a better deal as a result of working forward in this. And in today's world, and the world of history, we need to talk tough, and we've got a president who's willing to do that, and I stand with that president moving forward on these difficult issues, because if you're not going to be tough about it, then they're just going to roll you over, as sadly has happened in the past.
Governor Romney, and we can add 10 seconds to your time on this response.
Well, trade wars aren't good for us and not good for anybody, and no one in the world, I think, wants to see a trade war, and hopefully we'll be able to avoid that. But you can't walk away from the table just because you're fearful about what might happen. You got to stand up for American interests, and as a senator from Utah, I got to stand up for Utah's interests. And specifically, we look at our agriculture sector and our mining sector and recognize that these sectors need to have a fair, level playing field, and we have to assure that markets are opened up, particularly for our agricultural products, as well as our mining products, our coal, and so forth. These things are part of the job if you're going to be a United States Senator from Utah. Recognize, of course, it's appropriate for us to make sure that a trade agreement works in the benefit of our country. We have to be tough in those negotiations. We can't back away, but don't put in place broad-based across the entire world tariffs, because doing something of that nature will scare away our friends, will make our alliances weaker, and will make some of the bad guys in a stronger position. That would be a mistake, and I don't think the president wants to go there.
Our next question comes from Deseret News reporter Lisa Riley-Roche.
Thank you.
And it will go to Governor Romney first.
Governor Romney, in light of the recent deadly school shootings in Florida and Texas, I'd like you to address what you see as the federal government's role in dealing with school shootings. And beyond just improving safety procedures in schools, specifically, I'd like to know if you'd be willing to ban the sale or possession of bump stocks, ban semi-automatic assault weapons, and/or impose a 3-day waiting period to buy a gun. If you could be specific about those three, and then talk about the broader question of a federal government role in protecting students in schools.
Well, Lisa, I begin by affirming my conviction that the Constitution, including the Second Amendment, needs to be protected. And I do not favor new federal gun legislation. The exception is with regards to enhanced background checks that the President's also called for. And I also think we should ban the sale of bump stocks to the general public. But the school safety issue brings up, if you will, a heart-wrenching reality. And that is, our young people shouldn't have to worry about going to school. And parents shouldn't have to worry about losing a child. It's unthinkable. Now, interestingly, banks have figured out how to keep people from robbing the bank, all right? And their idea is pretty straightforward. And our kids are worth a lot more than our money. And the banks make sure there's a limited access to the building, and also that there's an armed person at the bank. If we want to have schools that are safe, it's pretty straightforward. Make sure we have an armed person or people at the school or nearby that can respond and repel whatever might occur. Number two, limit the access. Perhaps put in place magnetometers in certain circumstances. Number three, allow there to be an anonymous way to contact authorities if you're worried that someone represents a danger. And that's something we have in Utah with Safe Utah app, which every parent, every student ought to have. And finally, we ought to have an intervention individual or team that can step in when we have an individual who represents that kind of threat.
Representative Kennedy, we'll add 20 seconds to your time.
Thank you, David. And it's quite clear to me that it's not the gun that fires itself, it's the person behind the gun that's the issue. We need outreach to our citizens in our society. We need to find these individuals that perpetrate these heinous crimes and deal with them well before these crimes ever happen. We need to augment our access to psychology and psychiatry. We need better mental health services available. And we need more community outreach such that when an individual is talking about these sort of activities, activities, as was reflected in Parkland, Florida. There were multiple signs that that person, the perpetrator, was on the way towards doing something terrible. And in the end, all of those systems failed us. So we need to be quick to respond and deal with these things before they ever become an issue. And as a state legislator, I, like everybody else, felt something has to be done. And then I thought, well, where's the solution? And that's where I created the Utah School Safety Commission. It was a commission that I'm proud to say is being replicated around the country, because what we need are community-based solutions where people that care about communities, people that know the community are getting together. So we brought together an architect, teachers, we brought together parents as well as students, and all of these people, including a gun rights activist, are working on finding solutions that actually work. When it comes to banning things like bump stocks, it doesn't work. So I don't believe that that's going to be a useful step. If I'm going to step into this arena, which is a very difficult arena, I want to make sure that our actions actually work, which is why we created the Utah School Safety Commission. We're meeting for the 8th time this Thursday.
Governor Romney, a rebuttal on this one? If so, we'll add some.
Yeah, I would just say that I applaud the work of a commission and the input of various individuals. Oftentimes, there's a lot of talk associated with government and commissions. I hope this obviously is very different, but I'll go back and just reiterate what I mentioned earlier on, which is I think we have some pretty good models for what it takes to protect something of great value, like a child, and that is at a school. You have to have someone there that's armed. You have to also have limited access. You also have to be able to have warnings, and that's individuals, parents, or colleagues that identify someone that might represent a threat. And then you have to be able to intervene when someone has been warned about. And those things, we can talk about this at great length, but frankly, it's time for us to act. And one of the great, I think, frustrations people have with people in politics is that people like myself and others don't get the job done. And I can assure you that as a senator, I'm going to work very hard to get the job done on this and other topics. Representative
Kennedy.
Well, I just say that my opponent in the past has signed an assault weapon ban as governor of Massachusetts, and I'm fine with him changing his opinion. We all have the right to do that. But I stand firmly with the Second Amendment. My legislative record is clear. I have not voted against any bill that would ban Second Amendment rights for the people of Utah. And I feel like it's really important for us to be consistent as to our records regarding this. So I just say that when it comes to solutions to this important issue, community-based solutions are what's going to work, and we need to focus on the perpetrator of the crime, not on the weapon that's used.
Governor Romney, you were specifically mentioned, so we'll add 10 seconds to your time, and we'll allow Representative Kennedy to respond beyond that for 10 seconds as well if needed.
Well, I'd note this. I'm a believer in the right of states and localities to make their own decisions. And an interesting thing happened while I served as governor of Massachusetts, and that is that the pro-gun lobby said, look, we're really concerned about all these restrictions we have on weapons and hunting and being able to carry weapons in Massachusetts. And the anti-gun people said, hey, look, we're concerned about some of these assault weapons. And so the two of them came together and formed a piece of legislation that banned certain weapons and at the same time expanded the rights of gun-carrying individuals to be able to hunt and to carry guns throughout the state. So they came together and worked on something on a collaborative basis. Isn't that a remarkable thing? And I was happy to see two sides find a solution that worked for that state in that circumstance, and I supported that.
Representative Kennedy, any further words on this topic?
Thank you, David. And I just say thank you, Governor, for the local solutions. I think that's really important. But on this issue, as with others, the main thing that's consistent about your record on this is it's inconsistent. It's just hard for me to know, as our U.S. Senator, what you'll do regarding this and other issues. And that's fine. We are all able to change our minds. However, I would like, if I were the people of Utah, somebody consistent on these issues. And I will be a consistent advocate for our Second Amendment rights as well as our constitutional rights generally.
Let's go to the next question. It's a social media question. We thank our audience for sending in tweets and other communications. This one comes from Skylar Beltran, and it will go to Representative Kennedy. Will you support the Utah Medical Marijuana Initiative as a private voter? Should federal marijuana laws be enforced?
I've been using chemistry and medicines with people through my entire professional career, and I am so amazed at our pharmaceutical companies' capacity to create life-saving medicines. And I am in favor of initiatives. I think initiatives are a direct expression of the will of the people. So I am grateful that the people of Utah are motivated enough to generate this initiative. I will not be voting for this initiative because I need more data. I'm a doctor. Routinely, I have dealt with medicines with people, and I've found even with new medicines that were FDA approved and had been through years of study, that as those medicines were released on the market, we found after 2 or 3 years of literally thousands of people using those medicines, that they had problems that we never knew about. And often it seems that the medicinal use of marijuana is merely a front for the recreational use of marijuana. And I do not support that. I want more studies, though. And one of the things that I want to promote in the federal government as your U.S. Senator is we need to move marijuana off of Schedule I into Schedule II, where we can do the studies that we need so we know what this substance is and how to use it safely with our population.
Governor Romney.
I agree with Dr. Kennedy in that regard. And let me just elaborate for a moment, and that is that this ballot initiative is really not medicinal marijuana. I support medicinal marijuana, where a person with a condition receives a prescription from a real doctor, and it's filled by a real pharmacy. That, in my opinion, is something we ought to have. We ought to move there as quickly as we possibly can to get the care that people who really need pain alleviation medication, the help that they need as quickly as possible. But at the same time, I recognize as I look at this ballot initiative, that's not what it is. What this ballot initiative is, it's going to open the door to corner stores selling marijuana-laced brownies and gummy bears. You're going to have marijuana that's going to be in our schools across our state. That is not the right way to go. The right way to go is to say, let's legalize medicinal marijuana with prescriptions and prescribed through or filled entirely and exclusively through a pharmacy like Walgreens and CVS and so forth. That's the right way to go. This particular ballot initiative is not the right way to go, and I hope the people of Utah take a careful look at it and recognize how dramatically this could change our state if we were to support this particular initiative.
I sense you largely agree on this. Let's go to the next question.
Well, I just finish up by saying as a state legislator that we've worked on this issue. Actually, we've opened the door already for young ones to receive epilepsy treatment through CBD oil. In addition, terminally ill individuals have had access to this medicine through the state legislative purview that we've pushed forward with legislation. So David and the people generally, I just say we're working on this already. State-based solutions are going to work. We need more access to information, which is what I'd promote as your U.S. Senator.
I just note that I think there's great frustration on the part of people who need this kind of palliative care that something doesn't happen on this front, that there seems to be broad agreement but never movement. And one of the reasons I'm in this race and intending to go to Washington is I believe I can shake things up and get some people to move. I know how to pull people together. I think that has to happen on this as well as a number of other issues.
Next question comes from me. It'll go to Governor Romney first. Given that the summit involving the United States and North Korea has been canceled, what should be the U.S. position on North Korea's nuclear arms program? Specifically, should the U.S. make a preemptive strike on North Korean nuclear facilities and missiles? Governor Romney.
Well, our objectives in North Korea are very clear, and that is a complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula on a permanent basis, which is completely verifiable. That's our objective. We're not going to vary from that. The president's made it very, very clear. And we're still in the negotiation stage, all right? The meetings are on again, off again. That's a bit of a negotiation on the part of our side and their side. And so it's too early to prejudge what's finally going to happen. And I'm certainly not going to say something which would in any way compromise our commitment as a nation to the president's effort with regards to North Korea. I can assure you that what Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, said very much reflects the view of the president, and mine own as well, which is either North Korea will denuclearize on a permanent basis and verifiable basis through a diplomatic process, or there will be a military process. It's one way or the other, and they're going to have to make that choice. And they have to understand that we're committed and united on that front. And I applaud, by the way, our Democrats in Washington at this stage who are not carping and attacking the president, but are standing firm, recognizing this is a negotiation. We need to show that kind of unity. This is a very important issue. issue. We cannot have North Korea selling nuclear weapons around the world or threatening the homeland of our great nation.
Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, David. I'll just say that the on-again, off-again nature of this negotiation, it almost feels like a 16-year-old romance process where it's just kind of off and on, and you never know who's doing what. But the reality is the president, he's an extremely capable negotiator, and I've been very impressed in the past year plus in the things that he's been able to accomplish. As to using the power of military might, I hesitate about that, just like with tariffs. Economic warfare and actual warfare, both of those are tools that can and sometimes should be used, but very judiciously, and only when the right data is driving that right decision. I agree with Governor Romney is that we need a denuclearized Korea Peninsula, and I am in favor of whatever it takes to make that happen and would not take off the table military might, but I would say on that level that I need more data to understand whether or not that is something that should be embarked upon. But I would say I trust the president to do the right thing, and I think he's moving us in the right direction and want to see that continued, and I would support him in that.
I think you both agree on this issue, so we're going to take a break. If you're just joining us, we're about halfway through a debate featuring Republican Party candidates for the U.S. Senate seat being vacated by Orrin Hatch. I'm David Magleby, moderator for today's exchange. Candidates Mike Kennedy received the most votes from Republican delegates at the party's April convention. Mitt Romney qualified for the ballot using the signature gathering option allowed by Utah law. Utah's registered Republican voters will decide June 26th whose name will be on the November ballot as their party's candidate. Now, you can submit your comments or questions to the live broadcast on social media by using the hashtag UTDebates. Let's get back to questions, and this one is Alex Trujillo, and this one will go to Representative Kennedy first.
Thank you. You both want to fix the immigration system, but here in Utah there's a large labor shortage with unemployment at 3.1%. What is your stance on increasing legal immigration? We want to know, what is your solution to the fate of children brought here illegally by parents, the Dreamers? Do you favor deportation, an extension of the DACA legal protections, or a process where they could become citizens?
Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Alex, for that important question. And I'll just say first that as the first-generation American on my father's side, my dad is a naturalized American citizen. And I've been blessed to be raised in the United States of America and have access to the American dream. The fact that my grandfather and father came across the border and grew up in the United States and allowed me to be born in the United States is a great heritage for me, and I honor that. And I want people to have access to that. But we need to make sure that it is done in a legal and ordered fashion. We are a country of laws to make sure that we are civilized and social in our process. So first and foremost, we need border security. We have to stand firm on border security. And when it comes to border security, our president made a promise. His promise was simple. I will build a wall, and we will make our border secure. I stand with the president in keeping that promise. We should, as candidates, keep promises that we make on the campaign trail. The second thing is legal immigration needs to be possible, and it needs to be easier than illegal immigration. So I stand with the president also in working on that. And then finally, the third step would be dealing with these decent, honorable people that we call dreamers, some of which I could have been in the distant past. And I would say there are solutions, but we have to go with number one and number two first before we move to the third issue, which is still important, but something that we have to prioritize with the others.
Governor Romney.
Well, immigration is a mess in this country. Our system, it's just a testament to how ineffective Washington has been and the great need we have for leadership here. We need to reform our legal immigration system so that people know where they stand as they apply to become either a green card holder or a citizen of the United States. They ought to have points based on speaking English and having skills that we could use in our country. That's number one. Number two, we've got to make sure that illegal immigration is stopped. All right, we welcome legal immigration. It's the lifeblood of our country. We need people to come here legally. We welcome them. But illegal immigration has got to stop. And so, sure, yes, we need a barrier against Latin Americans who are coming across the border. We also need to make sure that our E-Verify system punishes employers that hire people who they should have learned were illegal in our country. And with regards to the Dreamers, look, it doesn't make sense for us to have 1.8 million people just living in limbo and wondering if they're going to be arrested and deported. This has to be resolved. The president proposed resolving it back in January. The Democrats agreed. The Republicans agreed. How come we can't get people together and get this resolved? In my view, as the president proposed, the Dreamers ought to be given legal status, not a special pathway to citizenship, but they ought to have the opportunity to get in line like everybody else if they want to become a citizen, but not sending them outside the country with by being deported. That's the president's view, at least as expressed in January. It's something I support. I'll work hard to fix our legal immigration system and to stop illegal immigration.
Is there a response or rebuttal, Representative Kennedy?
Well, I thought I remembered in the presidential campaign something about self-deportation, but that's fine. I guess that opinion has changed as well. But I'm in favor of immigrants coming here and being able to come here legally. God bless these decent people, and I want them to be here. I'm a reflection of what it means to be an immigrant in this country. So let's make sure we do it in an organized, ordered fashion.
A response?
Self-deportation was a reference to E-Verify, which I just mentioned in my first comment, which is if you punish employers for hiring people who are here illegally and people can't get jobs because they're here illegally, they will leave the country on their own as opposed to having to be arrested and taken out of the country by our ICE agents. I think people ought to be able to vote with their feet, or if we will leave with their feet, when employers are no longer able to hire them. Because recognize, putting a wall up is the right thing to do. But also at the same time, there are a lot of people that come here legally and stay. And if they can get jobs here, they don't go away. But if you have an E-Verify system that keeps people from getting jobs here illegally, that will allow people to go home on their own. If you will, self-deciders, that's, in my opinion, one of the best ways we can enforce our legal immigration system laws.
Let me ask a follow-up to both of you on this. Representative Kennedy, you laid out in order what you thought needed to happen, and only third would you address the Dreamers question. Are either of you willing to compromise and have partial funding of the wall, some changes in immigration policy, and also address the Dreamers issue? Or is it a must that the full wall be funded and all immigration other fixes be corrected before you deal with immigration? Representative Kennedy.
In a negotiation, as we embark upon those adventures, the reality is every party is looking out for their best interest. So if in a negotiation something is given before it should be given, then the other party is going to cease negotiating or completing their part of the deal. So for me, it stands firm. We have to secure our borders. Otherwise, the problem continues to get worse. People continue to cross the porous borders and make it so that the DACA issue, these blessed dreamers, there are more of them, and then we have to try to figure out how to work through that. So I believe it is important in this negotiation that we respect the lives and have compassion for those lives, but we need to make sure that we have the first priority in place, and that is border security, and that we're at least working on our legal immigration process when we start to work with the decent people we call dreamers.
Governor Romney.
Professor, I have to stand with Dr. Kennedy on this, and that is that in a negotiation you don't lay out where you're willing to compromise to. In my view, it is essential for us to have a barrier against our southern border, to also have a very firm and effective E-Verify system. I also think that we need to have a tracking system that identifies people who've come here illegally on a visa and may not have returned home. These kinds of things all have to be put in place. The president's also said we need to end chain migration, which is the idea that remote family members all get to come into the country if there's one legal person already here. And he said no more lottery immigration, which is just sort of randomly picking people. I agree with the president on those things. And I believe that we should work together to make sure that all those things come together in a way to fix our immigration system. But I could tell you, I am not going to stand by and let nothing happen. This has gone, I ran for president in 2008. This was an issue then. It's unbelievable that in this country we can't resolve this issue. And young people and people who want to come here legally deserve to know what America's going to do. It's time for us to resolve it.
The next question is from Kanisha Ragula, and it will go to Governor Romney first.
Thank you. The U.S. national deficit is expected to cross the $1 trillion mark by 2020. Given that this is a 50% increase since Republicans took over Congress earlier last year, how do you plan on addressing this issue, given that Republican control seems to have only exacerbated the problem?
Yeah, Kanesha, this is the big issue, and one of the reasons that I want to go to Washington. And that is that this national debt is a much bigger threat for the American people than I think we actually recognize. Not only an economic threat, but a national security threat. Our national debt is about $21 trillion, $71,000 per household in America. And most people don't worry about that because they say, well, who's going to pay that off? I'll never pay it off. But I hope people recognize they're paying the interest on the debt right now. Last year, we spent $300 billion on interest on the national debt, and that's going up to $700 billion. We're adding $1 trillion a year to the deficit and to the debt. And this is under Republican leadership. It is inexcusable. We're spending $4 trillion a year as a government. We're only taxing $3 trillion. We're $1 trillion short. We've got to get serious about finally balancing our budget. And there are ways to do that. I'm going to work together with other senators, get a group together to go to Mitch McConnell or whoever our leader is and say, Mitch, we're not voting for the next continuing resolution. We're not voting for the next omnibus bill unless we live within the spending caps, get back to appropriations process that allows us to finally get us on track to a balanced budget.
Representative Kennedy.
As a child who grew up in poverty, it was something that I learned early on is if I didn't learn how to control money, it would control me. And those messages, I didn't need to learn them out of a book. I didn't need to have a professor teach me those things. I felt them deeply in my heart as a result of the stress and the strain that we had as a family because we didn't know where the next meal was coming from. Coming from the circumstance where I had free school lunch as well as church welfare to support this family, I am grateful for the resources that we had that were available to us. And I know that it's vital for us that we control our money. And when it comes to not just me, but my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, we are mortgaging and bankrupting our future the way we continue to spend in almost a gluttonous fashion for the present and bankrupting the future. I reject that premise. I believe that it is vital for us as American citizens, as we look to our future, that we take care of our needs, we keep our promises to the most needy of our society at this point, but we must also remember that 50 and 100 years from now, those people will look to us and say, thank goodness, or curses on their names if we do not make the right decisions regarding this. I will vote no on continuing resolution omnibus bills. I will vote no on bills that I do not have a chance even to read. On process alone, I cannot stomach the possibility that I don't even know what's in this bill and I'm supposed to vote for it. We need to control our spending. I've done it personally. I've done it in a state legislature where we balance our budget with our good governor every year. It is possible, and I will do that as your U.S. Senator as well.
I'd like to ask a follow-up on this to both of you, given your answers. One is, you both stated out the claim that you would not vote for omnibus or continuing resolutions in this area. We had a government shutdown. Utah Senator Mike Lee was one of the leaders of that. It sounds to me like you would favor a shutdown if you can't accomplish what you've said. That's question one. Question two is, how do you accomplish a reduction in the deficit without reducing spending for entitlements or defense? Since so much of the federal budget is in those two categories, real traction on the deficit can only come with cuts in those areas. I think this one goes first to Governor Romney.
Yeah, first with regards to down government, you don't want to shut down government when you're given a notice 48 hours before a bill is going to get up or down, and they say, look, if you don't vote yes for this, well, the government's going to shut down. That's the wrong way to approach it. What has to happen is I have to get a group of senators together of like mind, and there are a number that I know that can come together of like mind and go to the leadership well in advance, months in advance, and say, we're telling you up front that you can't bring another one of these bills to us with 48-hour notice, closing government if we don't vote for it. You have to realize, unless this bill lives within spending caps, unless we have a normal budget process, appropriations processes, unless you put in place the chance for us to amend and to debate, we're going to vote no. So you know that now. And this gives you more strength, by the way, in your negotiations with the Democrats, because you can tell them, look, we can't get this bill through unless we follow the normal process. So that's number one. That's how we get there. And in terms of how do you get the money out? Yeah, you're absolutely right, Professor, which is you have to go where the big money is. 2/3 of our money is in entitlements. And you may recall, as I ran for president, I put out a plan to balance our entitlement spending: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. We increased the age of retirement for people who are 55 years of age and younger by 1 to 2 years. And we also had lower benefit growth for high-income people than for low-income people. And on that basis, we balanced the spending for our entitlements. Then there's one more area, and that's our discretionary spending. And in that area, you have to go through piece by piece and eliminate programs. You can't cut a little bit here and a little bit there. You got to say which things need to go back to the states where they can be run more cost effectively, which programs need to be eliminated altogether. There's way too much government, way too many programs. Get rid of these programs, get them back to the states where they belong.
Representative Kennedy.
State of Utah already has this all figured out. In fact, our unemployment rate is 3.1%. We have an economy that is the envy of the country. How do we do that? We cut taxes. We keep them low. We keep the regulatory burden off of the backs of our citizens and off of the backs of our small businesses, of which I am one of them. I am a small business owner as well. And when government gets in the way, we always find that it ends up burdening us to the point where they're not moving the programs forward that they're supposed to move, and ultimately we can't move forward in the innovations and growing our economy as we should. Why do I talk about growing the economy as the state of Utah has done, and as I've been privileged as a legislator to do? It's because in growing the economy, people are hired, their salaries increase, and as a result of that, they pay more taxes. When they pay more taxes, then our deficit on a positive level, you don't need to make cuts if you raise the value of the economy, as the state of Utah has done. So the first thing is get the government out of the way so the good people of the United States can accomplish what they can accomplish, which in general is prosperity and freedom. And then secondly, yes, we cannot tax our way out of these problems. We need to make cuts. But when it comes to cuts, it's a simple matter of everything is on the table in a small level. Senator Rand Paul talks about the penny plan. Okay, if the penny plan's too painful, how about a half penny plan? How about a quarter penny plan? There's got to be somewhere where we can all work together. It's not Democrats cutting Republicans' priorities, Republicans cutting Democrat priorities. We're all in this together, not just for us, but for our future. And I believe, David, and for the people of the United States and for good people in Utah, we can do this if we all work together.
We're going to go to a social media question now. This one will go first to Representative Kennedy. This comes in through Facebook from Nathan Steve Ricks. There is one healthcare system that is run by the federal government, the Veterans Administration. What possible solution would you propose to reform the VA to ensure it becomes accountable and responsive to patients it's designed to treat? And I'm going to remind you 1 minute on this so that we can get to a few more questions as well. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, David, and I appreciate that question. As a healthcare provider, it's been pretty sad. I take care of veterans regularly, and I love to take care of them just like I love to take care of my other patients as well. And when they come to see me, they come under their Medicare plan because they couldn't get an appointment with their Veterans Administration's doctor. The reality is our VA system, we have one hospital in Salt Lake City, and I work in Utah County. That is a relatively short drive, 30 to 45 minutes, depending on where you are. But we've got people all over the West who have to go to that VA system for their medical care. And they call to get an appointment, and they might get an appointment in 4 or 5 weeks. There's no way with acute care issues, in the case of a bronchitis or a sinusitis, that they can get in and be seen. So where do they go? They come to primary care doctors like me. And I encourage alternative pathways. I believe the VA serves a role, and we should support it in that role. But I believe that veterans deserve excellent insurance that they can pick anywhere they want to go, in any hospital or provider throughout the state that they want to go to, and I would support that.
Governor Romney.
I think the doctor's right on that. My own view is that these people who've served our country, who have put their lives at risk, in many cases have been seriously injured physically, mentally, deserve our very best. And it's a national embarrassment that we have young people and older people who've served in our military that need health care, that need particularly mental health care, and they can't get treatment. And they wait in line for as long as a year to get treatment. It's inexcusable. And for the reasons that I've mentioned and Dr. Kennedy has mentioned, I think it's appropriate for us to say, look, if you want to go to the VA hospital, terrific. If it's proximate for you, that's wonderful. But if you want to go to another primary care physician, or you want to go to tertiary care or a hospital in your area, or a mental health professional in your area, you have a voucher to take to that particular individual as well. You don't have to stay within the VA system unless you want to stay within the VA system. Let's make sure we don't continue to delay the provision of health care for these people who've served our country so valiantly. It is inexcusable. It's something I will work very hard to change, to make sure that people have the kind of alternative paths that Dr. Kennedy mentioned.
Thank you again. Agree on this one. So let's go to Lisa Riley Roche for a question, and this will go first to Governor Romney.
Thank you. I'd like to know, what can you do for Utahns that your opponent cannot in a divided and dysfunctional Congress? We've already talked a little bit about that. I'd like to know, would you be willing to work with others to find common ground on pressing issues like taxes, immigration, or are you not inclined to compromise on policy differences? Governor Romney?
Well, Lisa, I don't compromise on principles. I look for places to find common ground. And I had the occasion to serve as a governor in a state that was pretty Democrat. My legislature was about 89% Democrat. And it was obvious to me that to get anything done, I had to find places where there was common ground. We were able to do that from time to time and make some real progress in that regard. One of the things I did was this. I decided I wasn't going to attack the Speaker of the House or the Senate President on a personal basis. We could disagree on policy, but I wasn't going to attack them. And after about 6 months, I got a note from one of the two of them saying, Governor Romney, I've noticed over the last 6 months you've never attacked me. I'm going to stop attacking you. We got together every Monday for 1 to 2 hours, talked about the issues that the state faced, and we worked together. That has to happen in Washington. It's the way it used to be in Washington. Presidential leadership is essential for that, but I also think individual members of the Senate have the capacity to reach within their own caucus as well as across the aisle and build the kind of friendships and associations that lead to trust and the search for common ground. Immigration being one of those.
Governor, I
we
need to
seem to
stop
all
you on
agree.
time here,
so
please.
I'm going to work very hard on that basis to work collaboratively to get things done.
Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Lisa. And I think building relationships is such a fundamental part of humanity. It's a key role that we should play in the political arena. And I just say I'm grateful to hear my opponent say that he's willing to work with people, because when he's labeling President Trump as a phony and as a fraud and Pastor Jeffress as a bigot, I don't see those as productive steps in building relationships. And everybody has a right to do as they see fit in working with individuals. But as to me, that's what I've done for my whole professional life. I take anybody that comes to me as a doctor, and I am more than happy to take them as they are. I am not trying to change them into anything they don't want to be, but I am pleased and honored to work with them. And I find it to be exhilarating to find people that are different from me that I can actually learn from and expand my view on the world and work productively. Even when we disagree, we can do so respectfully. And I do believe that that's a fundamental difference between how I approach the world in the doctor world as well as in the legislature. I'm willing to work with the people that have good ideas. I think my opponent has demonstrated occasionally, and that's fine. He can do as he wishes, but that he's not willing to do that. And for me, relationship building is key to getting things done.
We're very tight on time, so I'm going to need to proceed.
No. You can't go. You can't go without that.
20 seconds.
No.
20 seconds.
I get longer. That's a lot there. First of all, I've known the president for a long time, and the president has endorsed me in this campaign, which shows he respects people who call him like they see him. Number two, with regards to Robert Jeffress, this is a guy who said that Mormonism is a cult, that it's a heresy from the pit of hell, that Joseph Smith is a servant of Satan. All right, that person is allowed to say that under the First Amendment anywhere they want, and they have the right to do that. But the idea that this person would be chosen by the State Department to represent our nation at the opening of an embassy is simply wrong. And for Representative Kennedy to call him and apologize to him is absolutely inexplicable. Jeffress should be apologizing to Representative Kennedy and to the people of Utah of my faith and other faiths. He said worse about Muslims. When people express bigotry, they ought to be called out for it.
Representative Kennedy, as briefly as possible here, please.
My opponent's been quite clear as to the way he stands on things, and he calls them like he sees them. And I just say, I'm not sure with President Trump that you see things the right way. I do know some good eye doctors if you'd like to have a referral to get your vision checked, because I think President Trump has been outstanding. He is one of the presidents that we have that actually keeps his promises on the campaign trail. And I'm proud to stand with the president and not deride him publicly. If I disagree with the president, I will do so in a respectful fashion.
This has been quite an exchange. Thank you. You've gone over time enough that we don't have time for the final wrap-up question. Earlier, we mentioned that Governor Romney gained ballot access by gathering signatures. We'd like to clarify that he also qualified for the ballot through the Republican convention process. It's been an enlightening hour with our candidates, Mitt Romney and Mike Kennedy. They are candidates for the Republican U.S. Senate primary election on June 26th. Thank you both for participating and for your desire to serve in public office. We celebrate that, and we wish you both success on primary election day. Thanks also to our panelists for their contribution. A special thanks today for the efforts of Scott Howell and Thomas Wright, co-chairs of the Utah Debate Commission Board. We appreciate the many hours they spend leading the commission and working to bring Utah voters these debates. The Utah Debate Commission urges you to vote in the upcoming primary election. To vote for Republican Party candidates, you must declare your affiliation with that party. You can do that and register to vote at the same time at voting locations. Your county clerk can help you with questions on how and where to vote.